Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Team Talk Radio. We've got the kit on. We're ready to go. Look at this.
Kit?
It's actually pretty good quality, isn't it?
I have to say, it's pretty good quality, like Teachers Talk Radio, which is pretty good quality too. So, not the best for us.
That's it, yeah. I mean, obviously, when it came to the post, I thought, oh, goodness, it's going to be one of those things that's going to scratch all evening. But to be fair to the team, it's absolutely spot on. And you've got your glasses. I don't think you paid as much as Keir Starmer, though.
Sir Keir Starmer, obviously.
I apologise,
don't deny him. No, I have new varifocals. I think it's like Life in HD. It's great. It's analog HD. Fantastic. So yes, more expensive. A bit of advice out there, obviously, make sure you claim your eye tests back as well as part of your occupation, along with your outfits and clothes. So a little bit of union advice from the resident union man in Teachers Talk Radio. Something I did when I got my eye test.
Sorry, Brent. Got a call coming through. Hello. Oh, hello. Yeah, so I'm just on YouTube at the minute. Okay. What? Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. See you in a bit. Bye. Bye. Go on, Brent. Carry on.
Hello. Who's that? Who's that?
It's just somebody. You don't need to worry about it. It's just somebody. I thought I just had to take it. I thought it was emergency. I thought, why bother turning my phone off?
How rude.
Yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? Just take a call mid-conversation. Why not?
Well, why do that? That's just like very, very rude. How dare you? What was the conversation about? Was it life-changing important? Was it an emergency?
No, just tell me on the way home. Just my wife saying she's on the way back from the shop. So
did you switch your phone off? I mean, I've got mine sitting here in that little, little thing.
You turn the notifications off and stuff.
No, hold on. I'm just playing SimCity. Just wait a second. Just wait a second to finish the little game of SimCity there. Just give us a second. I'm just taking my earpiece out there. Because I walk around these days with one earpiece in. Like Secret Service.
That's the other well, while Brent's just finishing off SimCity, should we just say hello to tonight's sponsors?
Other simulation games are also available as well. We're not sponsoring SimCity.
Yeah. We've got Futurum Careers with a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. They help teachers to show their students what they can aim for and how, from articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts. All resources align with the Gatsby benchmarks and are free to download. So please visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. And Brent, hello, John. It's John Katz. Has brought to you this show has been brought to you in partnership with John Katz Educational, publishing professional development books. Level up your professional development today with johncattbookshop.com to explore a full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 and get 20% off your order. And we're also really pleased to say that we're sponsored by Reading Solutions UK, which is the home of Dreambox Reading Plus, an online reading development program to create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 and beyond. Beyond GCSE Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive teaching. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them in a personalised learning pathway built to accelerate their strengths and improve in all areas of development. You can try the programme for a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request a free pilot. So I think our acting was good there, Brent. I think we kind of pulled it off. And this show is titled tonight, Should Phones Be Banned? Not my phone banned. Should phones be banned from schools?
From Teachers Talk Radio.
No, don't ban phones. The people are watching the show online. And if you've got a thought about tonight's show, please message in because last week it was great to have kind of some support coming in and comments coming in. So this was the big news earlier on in the week that the Ormiston Academy, which I think we both know kind of relatively well because they took over a school where we used to both work. They've taken the hit and they're going for it. So they've started the new year, a new announcement. They are banning mobile phones. Good news.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of it seems when Rishi Sunak came out with his advice and you're like, oh, we should advise schools to ban mobile phones when most schools are going, hello, 2008. Yeah, most schools started policies around 2010, 11. First smartphones were 2008, 2009. And I was speaking to a former deputy head teacher of a school in Nottinghamshire who, said that his school was banned them outright straight off in 2011. So they haven't had an issue. And when I said, why don't all schools, particularly our school at the moment has a policy of they are allowed mobile phones on the school grounds, but they're not allowed to use them. So if they're caught using them, it gets taken from them, confiscated. And of course, play a little bit of cat and mouse sometimes, especially breaking lunchtime when they have, they're walking around like Secret Service and you think, I can see it on in. Or for instance, on my television screen, I have television, so interactive television rather than a whiteboard, and it's Bluetooth enabled. So as the kids come in, I can see, whose Bluetooth channel is bringer of death, hashtag, and you want to see them all go like, switch them off, simple as that. And it's not been an issue for us. Primarily speaking, our biggest issues are things like behavior and vaping and low-level behavior in class and just basically uniform refusal and haircuts and jewelry and skirt lengths, which I think we have to solve, with trousers. But there are the things that we're really struggling with the most rather than phone use. That was an issue 7 or 8 years ago until we got a handle on it. And now it's really embedded policy. So for play to Ormiston Academy, I don't see an issue with it. I think they have taken a more extreme measure than most schools have, i.e. they've gone for a complete blanket ban. Is that my understanding? They've gone for not on the school site, no mobile phone, that's it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think this is part of the issue, isn't it? That if like anything, it's like we were doing something today. So on Wednesday, we're doing some kind of basic kind of teacher training because we had kind of some NQTs and people kind of on their kind of PGCs. And we were just kind of experienced staff were just kind of talking about the importance of, doing things at the door. Because once you allow something into the room, it's a struggle from that point onwards. And I think that's the same with the phone, isn't it? Kind of once you get through the school gates and you're kind of, I guess, kind of breaking the rules or kind of going against kind of school policy, there's between that moment then and then 4 o'clock or wherever the school finishes, you're chasing your tail from that point onwards, aren't you? If you're not asking them to take the headphones, you're not taking the phones away, you're not kind of doing kind of uniform, you're not doing all those things, then it becomes it's a nightmare from that point, isn't it? Because you're never going to claw that back.
You make a rod for your own back, essentially, and you can see the blanket policies. It's simpler, it's more clarity, it's more straightforward. In our situation, one of the reasons why we suggested the children, the parents with them having a mobile phone is for safety and security, which I find hilarious because back in my day, take the varifocals off, younger man, we didn't have all that. We walked, and statistically speaking, there is less actual crime, kidnapping, all that kind of stuff. Kids never been safe. We had telephone boxes in practically every street corner growing up, but I find it quite strange now that there is that perception of safety, and yet there is that lack of children walking to school. There's more children bus to school or walk and be given lifts to school. I mean, I've had 20 years anecdotal evidence in my local area, and there was hardly a car in our driveway at 8:30 in the morning. Now it's like wacky races. We set a traffic lights. And I said that to some of the children. How far have you come? Half a mile. Why are you getting a lift into school? Well, it's safer. So there's an element of that as well. And I think this idea of parents tracking their children on mobile phones is an element of trust. If you are, our policy operates on an element of kind of faith and trust. And that faith and trust works upon the fact that, yes, we allow the children to have the mobile phone on site, with a provision that should they break the rules, they get it taken from them. It works reasonably well for us. It's not foolproof. Yes, there is incidents where things have been filmed and they've broken the rules and there's been consequences. But in the main, we don't really have a huge problem with mobile phones in our sector. Individually, we have some children who cause issues, but in the main, the majority of the children adhere to the policy.
Yeah.
And
is this a bit like? Is this a bit like kind of? Sorry, Brent. Is this a bit like kind of the department or school where kind of one or two teachers say, "Well, it's okay for us. It kind of works for us to do this." Should we not have done something kind of collectively as a kind of school teacher body to say, actually, from the start of September, every school, every teacher, parents, listen up. Your child is not going to be allowed to bring a phone to school. And then this kind of association with phone and school just gets broken. It'll be a tough couple of weeks, but the whole country just does it. England, Wales just does it as a carpet kind of, this is banned. And then we all kind of move on together. So every teacher can just go, that's something that's not on my radar anymore.
I think in the good old days when you had Department of Education and local authorities, and you had local authorities, you could implement a policy like that. But the education system's so fragmented now that I don't think you'd be able to do that, would you? Because trusts now practically are semi-private. They'll bypass that. And even when
it's interesting, this is a trust though that's kind of taken the kind of leap forward.
That's what they've done, exactly. And rather than one trust would do that, so another trust might do that. And I think this is where you're at with education. You want a perfect example of where we're at with education. You have one trust doing one thing, another trust doing another thing. You go around the country, and like I'm saying, we have a policy in our school that seems to work okay for us for the moment. However, I've raised concerns from a union point of view that I'm getting concerned of students secretly recording colleagues. And recording colleagues on smartphones, because I think that's the other thing. It shouldn't just be mobile phones. For me now, it's about devices. It's about smart devices now, because it's not just mobile phones that can record, or kids can listen to their music. Kids can now, their smart watches are practically exactly, Wi-Fi enabled, etc. So I think there's a technology issue there. But then, as you well know, some of our school technology is that old that what's in a child's pocket is probably more powerful than what's on their desktop.
We've had this problem this week, where I work, that we kind of, as a staff body, we're really keen on this. We're really going to kind of hit the no mobile phones out. A lesson in, half the laptops don't quite work. What do you do at that point? Do you kind of sacrifice a really good research activity, a kind of technology lesson, and to make that stand, or do you just say, well, actually, just in this instance, can you get your phone out? I think you're right. And also, we need to stop calling it a phone. It's not a phone, is it? It's a mini computer. It's a handheld computer. And I don't know, the language does need to change, because I know that my children, and it might be that they just don't want to speak to me, which is fair enough, but they never answer the phone. So they never actually kind of pick up the phone. You can see the phone just ringing in the corner. And they look at it like, what's going on here? This thing's kind of like moving and vibrating.
Hello? But that's like when I was teaching computers last year, the first thing I saw children doing was they didn't know how to turn on the computer. They were like, this is not working, sir. And I'm like, push the button. And then another child was doing this to the screen. I'm like, it's not a tablet. It's a freestanding PC. Majority of them hadn't seen a PC before. A lot of them didn't know what this was. And one or two of them laughed and went, this is called a mouse. And they're like, mouse? I mean, yeah, it's a mouse. Because it's so tablet enabled and a smartphone enabled. And so, again, we saw this during COVID when a lot of the children, we changed our homework policy on that, because we were like, yeah, all the kids have got Wi-Fi. Oh, yeah, all the kids have got, one laptop at home. No, one laptop at home was dad or mum working from home. And the child was doing their homework on their smartphone. So even a lot of schools, and here's the contradiction, a lot of schools have, how many apps, the homework apps do they have? Smart apps do they have? We're wired into this. We're saying, oh yeah, check your homework on this, check your homework on that. But by the way, you can't take a smartphone into school. So there's a bit of contradiction in some of the...
It's very confusing. Like, I do get it, like, in what the message we're sending to students, because we've done it. We've done that first lesson about kind of logging onto the Teams group, working out how to do your kind of Microsoft 360, using your kind of Microsoft app to kind of make sure it's you and security and all this business. And then we're saying, oh, and by the way, you're not allowed to use that. Because we've kind of tied them into this thing is something for school. However, you're now saying don't do that. We put up a QR code. I don't know if it could just come up quickly again, because that was our education tonight with Catherine Birbal Singh, and kind of her solution to that, wasn't it, was to buy the students, everyone basically, a brick phone, like an old school phone. So if you did want a communication during the day, then a kind of a brick phone could be picked up from the school, and then that could then a conversation could be had from that point onwards. But the phone itself
was going further, though, wasn't she? Was going further, not just about the phone. She was going further into social media, mirroring a lot of the research on the damaging aspect of social media, not just phones itself in school. So there was a wider conversation, wasn't there, about she wants a blanket ban for social media. Catherine not one for holding back on her opinions, and we didn't get into other things. You're going to listen to that and look for other things that Catherine's opinions are. No, we kind of kept it just about that issue. But it's very, very interesting because she has some ideological backup and some research to show. And I think, although I may disagree on some things with Catherine, but on that we kind of find some common ground. Not completely, but we did find some common ground that I think there needs to be a wider conversation about phone usage, social media usage out of school. But then if you're going to ban phones at school, what you're going to get is a masking effect that you're going to get as soon as the kids get out. And we have that. I have kids come up the driveway and I have to go, not in school. But as soon as our kids get out of school, straight away, they're just outside. And funny, first thing in the mornings, it's like watching the Walking Dead. I mean, the amount of times that children have nearly walked across the road for me because they're just basically...
Yeah, there's going to have
zombie time,
I mean, it was interesting. This is the previous government's reaction to it back in October, so virtually like a year ago, really, that kind of this came out again. Nothing like that particular kind of administration to do things just slightly kind of off, kind of kilter. 2nd of October is a mad time to kind of start handing out advice. But it was interesting because just going down that report, Tom Bennett, the school behaviour advisor at the time, was saying this is fantastic move forward for ensuring that schools are able to work, learn and grow in a place free from distracting influence of mobile phones. Schools have already banned them, and students feel, and reports say that students are happier, safer, and able to focus more than they were before. And a head should now be reassured that their efforts of keeping their schools mobile free will be backed by the DfE. Now, unless I'm kind of mistaken, I've not heard anything from the DfE even after this announcement. There's no update on mobile phones at all on the DfE website, unless I'm happy to be mistaken on that. But it's kind of a strange one, isn't it, when one of the academy trusts has kind of done it for quite a lot of schools and pupils in one go, but kind of the Department of Education have not made any kind of comment on it at all. Not formally.
I think, to be honest with you, because it's nothing out of the ordinary. Other academies have done that all along, and other schools individually have done that all along. I think individual head teachers have come to some sort of consensus. Because you're working with parents as well. I mean, in our situation, we felt that that policy was correct for our setting, our context, our location, the range of children we get coming from the number of miles away, because our children come from a large catchment area. They're not immediately made up of children from the immediate local area, which would infer that they do need the communication device more theoretically, although Catherine's point, which I do agree with, is, if they need a telephone, then give them a telephone. You don't have to give them a smartphone. I think it's a very good point. Why does there have to be £1,000 in a cost of living crisis? So that's another thing that really upsets me is, a lot of people are, in poverty, and yet their children are walking around with £1,000 phone in their pocket. Sorry, guys. Why? And I get this culture that we've created of our children. We want our children to be popular. We want our children to have friends. honestly speaking, if your child is not popular because they don't have the latest mobile phone, then good. Do they want people? Do they want their friends to like them because they carry £1,000 mobile phone? It's a bit superficial, if you ask me. Now, I'm not a 7 or 8, 9, 10-year-old person living in that world, and thankfully I'm not, because I think they are on a treadmill, and I think we need to, I think, rein it in. I mean, my immediate parent friendship group, my daughter's immediate friendship group, all got together about a year ago and made an agreement. And the agreement was no smartphone until, or no phone until they leave primary school and go to secondary school was the cutoff point. And none of us have broken ranks on that yet. So I have an 8-year-old going to year 4, and she keeps saying about, oh, when I get a phone, and I'm going, yeah, when you get a phone, good luck with that. You know, but it does, I can feel the pressure coming on. I'm already hearing of some others in the class, not in her immediate friendship group, and et cetera, and I'm dreading it. I am dreading that moment when that child gets a device. But I also was a clever enough parent. It'll be limited. It'll be a game. It'll be the game of trust and everything else. But because they do live in that world, it's the same argument that, you know, parents had my generation about me watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, Freddy Krueger movies, and staying up watching 15 movies that were, you know, that Mike Reed guy, I remember him sitting on the edge going like, this movie contains. I mean, every generation has people saying these kids today are going to be worked by rock music. It was, you know, it was heavy metal rock music in the 80s and 90s, wasn't it? There's always something corrupting children.
But I think those two issues are slightly separate, because as we kind of, I don't know if there's an Oscar for kind of online kind of talk show hosts, but I think we should be up there for our performance at the start of the show. But for me, it's more of that. It's more of the kind of, they're just sat there kind of holding the thing, you know, and then it's kind of, you know, when it goes off or notifications go off, it's like immediate. The jerk is, I'll stop that. I'm not interested in what you're doing. I'm going to do something on this now. And, you know, that kind of thing about, you know, that cycle of learning gets broken at that point, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Which is actually the problem, that we're not really explaining to parents very much. And this might kind of dip into our second story about...
It's the dopamine, isn't it? It's that... Yeah. I think the psychologists are coming at it. It's the instant gratification dopamine hit that is concerning. It's that almost synaptic firing, you know, it's basically ding, 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 ding. And when you look at, again, the evidence is quite fresh on the number of neurodivergent children. You're looking at the number of children with attention problems. You're looking at the low attention span. You start looking at all those different factors. You know, kids who are half asleep because they're up all night long, and interestingly, when you look at the patterns of happiness, well-being, and welfare, and again, this plays into what Catherine was saying when we had her on, is that there is a direct correlation between smartphones' inceptions, saturation, and children's happiness, well-being, but also the amount of time they spend out with their friends, the amount of time they spend outdoors, the amount of time they have healthier, actual physical friendships. Because the amount of kids now are like superficial friendships, and they say they've fallen out with this online friend. You're like, what? Online friend? Have you ever met them? And I just think, again, with COVID just accentuated that. I think that a lot of our children are lonely, they're isolated, they're vulnerable, they're up in their rooms, and hey, you know, they're not causing problems because they're zoned out. That's great for busy parents working for 3 and 4 jobs. I think everything's just working one way to pull these children into a kind of world that I think is not actually physically and mentally healthy for them, and it's causing obesity. It's just so many knock-on effects, you know what I mean? It's not just, you say that it distracts from learning, it's distracting from life. You know, they are terribly unhappy, and yet materialistically, a generation that's never had so much variety and choice, you know, it's, or, you know, 800 TV channels, and they still can't find something except watch something on YouTube.
I just want to pick up on the kind of comment below. Is that I definitely agree with the first statement there, that there's virtually never an urgent need for the phone. And we had a conversation today with a group of what would it be, almost like 19-year-olds, to say that actually, you know, part of a conversation, because we talk about transparency and working together and relationships, part of that should be, if you do have an emergency, we should already know about that. That should already be a conversation that's been had. And, because, very rarely, I think, there's a situation where you do need to suddenly pick up the phone. But the school has systems to contact people internally anyway, if something does happen. Something about the kind of national policy that I mentioned. The only thing I'd kind of, thanks JBL, but the only thing I'd kind of just comment on there that I don't think it is rare. I think in some cases, and some teachers who are possibly struggling with behaviour and other things, it can be a kind of a constant kind of niggle all the time. And I've heard stories where some teachers just can't get a hold of it, and it's really difficult. And that's where I think kind of a wider banning or a bigger picture kind of policy might have just.
From a health and safety point of view, I agree. From a health and safety point of view of protecting staff from children, and you take these TikTok crazes and you take the recordings, and that's always been a little bit worrying me, that children recording, sharing devices, recording your voice. And when you get AI and everything else, they can record you and upload stuff online. You lose your intellectual property, you lose control over that. There's also things like something happens at school. This would include why a ban is a good thing. Something happens at school, child directly contacts the parent without any filter, straight away to get their story in. And that does happen. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, the parents ring in the school, and somebody in school hasn't even heard about the incident. And some hot parents going, oh, what's going on? And you can get that child contacting the parent at work, and the parent's very upset because they're getting this child, la, la, la. And they completely, go overboard. And then when it's investigated, the child then is found out that they've done something wrong, and they've just tried to get to their parent first to get it on their side. But then you have a parent upset at work because the child's contacted them and texted them at school. And you have that on trips as well. School trips, completely undermines. It's almost like the 24/7 culture that parents have to have contact with their child. And I'll give you, an anecdotal thing. My daughter went off to the Scouts this weekend, which is brilliant. And the first thing she said to me on Saturday afternoon, completely sodden with a cut finger, like E.T. Eliot, it was like wrapped around in a bandage, and she put herself and was like, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm really sore." And basically, the first thing she said to me is like, "Can I have my iPad on the way back?" I went, "No, I haven't had technology all weekend." And I went, "And isn't it brilliant?" And she looked at me and went, "How'd you do weekend?" "Yeah." And I really took a lot of joy out of that the fact that, quite simply, she had gone old school and was as happy as Larry, but also quite sad that the first thing she wanted to do was have a little bit of downtime, because she wants to just have downtime to herself, and her downtime was having a little bit of iPad time in Minecraft. And that worried me a little bit of, like, she had a little bit of a digital detox at that age. But at the same time, there's a solution. Old school, get them out, get them doing things, get them talking to people, get them playing games, get them playing sport. But you can't do that when you've cut your funding for all those things. You can't do that when there's left youth clubs. You can't do that when your football pitches are absolutely flooded.
That's why I wonder. That's why I wonder if the Department of Education has just kind of backed away a little bit from this, just because it's kind of like another Pandora's box. And I think if they kind of went to the public again and said, "Oh, and this has gone wrong," it'll seem kind of a little bit kind of that kind of blaming culture that they've done kind of recently. We did do a quick poll for the show, and we got kind of 82% saying yes, that phones should be banned. I'm just trying to find the comment now, but there's a comment kind of just directly under it that said, "I wonder who would break first, basically the adults or the students," i.e. the staff, because that's what I've seen as well. I've seen some very poor kind of modelling, and and it's that kind of when you kind of say to a member of staff, kind of, maybe you shouldn't have your mobile phone, they'll go, "Oh no, it's Teams." Yeah, and I don't kind of buy that all the time. There's that many Teams messages that you need to be on your
mobile phone at the teacher's desk.
But I mean, as much as I can, I will, if I remember, I try and leave it in the office, because I say this to the pupils. I'm just as bad as you sometimes. If notifications start going off, your hand kind of goes to your pocket, doesn't it? And before you know it, you've got your phone in your hand, and it's like, well, I didn't even know it was there. It's not kind of it's so kind of behaviorist, isn't it?
Sneak it in the drawer and just open the drawer and have a quick look at the drawer. I mean, I wonder you wonder how many staff, are exactly modeling bad behavior. And I'm not criticizing, we're saying it is part of society. This technology now is integrated into our 24/7 life. And I only see more integration. Your banking's on there, your life is on there, your social media is on there, every aspect now. Your music's on there. As you said, it's not a mobile phone. It's literally a personalized life device. And for some, it's the most important thing, to these children, and is a dangerous object in the wrong hands. Again, sometimes government can be useful. You can ask parents to contact the government if they wish to change. I think that's a fair point. We're a democracy, and if more parents demand this change, then it does happen. And that was, I suppose, one of the things that worries me is that education and issues like this were not high enough up the agenda come the last election. For me, the mental health crisis in our children should have been a lot higher, and the physical health of our children should have been a lot higher in that last election. But for whatever reason, it wasn't really. The top educational sort of hit was VAT on private schools. And that sort of concerns me that, the physical and mental health and welfare of our children should be, for me, the top priority because of the future. And they're also the most vulnerable. And yet, we are skirting around the actual real issue. And the real issue is banning mobile phones in school does not solve the mobile phone usage problem or the late nights or the social media issues. That at school may manage in school time a problem which is a problem for some schools, but we are not therefore resolving the bigger issue is the addiction our children have.
Yeah, right. I think that's got a really good summary, Brent, and we're just going to take a quick pause to hear from our sponsors.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. John Catt have an exceptional collection of book titles that cover a range of educational topics, ideas and research. The books are aimed at forward-thinking schools and support best practice teaching for both primary and secondary education. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Okay, welcome back to tonight's Education Tonight. If you want to kind of listen back to the first half, please feel free. All our shows are up on YouTube forever, I think. I don't think they're ever kind of taken down, and you kind of go back to previous shows. I think last week's show with Dr. Tom Bennison was also put out as a podcast called The 3 R's. And we'd like to thank Paul Hazard for doing that. It's very, very kind of him to post that out for us, which is great. Thank you. So we are looking for, we're looking at tonight's second story, which is the fact that, and I can see Brent's blood pressure starting to rise as I say this, it's the Kerry Katona story.
We actually have to do our reading solutions, my friend, as well.
Oh, okay. Sorry, just bear with me a second. They just thrown me off. So Reading Solutions UK is the home of Dreambox Plus, an online reading development program. Create strong readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive teaching. Reading Plus accurately assesses students' skills gaps and places them in a personalised learning pathway built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the programme for 3 to 4 weeks through their pilot today, and you can visit Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request a free pilots. Yeah, the more students we have reading, the better, I think, for kind of all of society, so they can express their democratic rights as well, and to understand kind of the world around them. So it's really important that. So, Kerry Katona, we've got a kind of.
Ironically, just before we start that, ironically, I have now got a class once every 2 weeks where I read for a full hour. It's part of my literacy, which is interesting because the book that they've given me, which I don't want to mention because obviously it might not be one of our John Cat books, but it's about a young neurodivergent boy who struggles to pay attention in class, and then I'm reading, I'm going. It's like me when I'm listening to school, going basically, wow. And I'm doing, and we were told not to do voices, but when I do reading, I ended up kind of, my kids were like, really enjoyed your reading. I thought, kind of doing what I used to do to my 6-year-old when I was doing, am I the only witch in the, the witch in the broom or all those, and it's interesting when you're, it's really tough when you do a full hour full of reading. Respect to primary school, primary school listeners, reading hour must be really tough on the voice because, I've got a good, strong voice, but reading for a full solid hour and concentrating for a full solid hour is pretty tough, to be fair, but it's really worthwhile. Checking the understanding as well. So yes, I'm now doing once every 2 weeks a full one hour's lesson of reading, which is
I think it should be done more actually. We were talking. My daughter was saying they've started to read a book kind of in class, and I know it's done kind of voluntarily. I think now kind of because it's done voluntarily, there isn't the fear, because I remember kind of just being pointed at in English and saying, now you read that section. That was absolutely terrifying in year 7 to do so. But we digress. Kerry Katona slams schools for teaching pointless subjects like geography when we have AI and Google. She calls for kids to be taught real life schools. I didn't realise actually that Kerry Katona was part of the curriculum review panel that was kind of going through. So I think there's kind of a lot going on here. But what I found interesting, if we can have a look at this slide that's got the geographical association, I didn't actually realise kind of how popular geography was as a subject. As I kind of doing the research for the show, it's actually kind of
it is the best subject on earth.
We'll go through kind of. I want to go through the objective stuff first, if you don't mind, Brad. We'll go through the kind of 6 kind of most popular subject with 293,319 students kind of opting to take geography. That's slightly less than history, but a bit more than RE. So it is a kind of very popular subject. A lot of students are actually choosing to do geography as a subject. So I know that the geography kind of was in there, so obviously that hit all geographers kind of quite hard. But the wider point was, I think, if I can speak for Kerry Katona, was that it was basically the curriculum's out of date. It's forcing students maybe not to go to school, and we covered this last week with the Charles Laureate, kind of talking about maybe that school isn't for everybody. Is it not just like a wider kind of thought about that, really?
I think her wider point is a point we always make about the functionality of the school curriculum and the application of the school curriculum to the real world. I think we had that last week about, Dr. Benson with mathematics for life and mathematics for, abstract, I get that. But she says contradictorily, real life skills, geography, would she like to navigate herself between A to B when she's going from one rock concert or one tribute act to another? I have to say, if you're going to pick on a subject that's pointless, I wouldn't say that geography is pointless. Now, I'm a geography graduate, I'm a history teacher, I'm a geography teacher. If she wants to say that, for instance, building your house on a floodplain is a good idea, then go on ahead. If she wants to go on about economics and business, as she mentions about taxes, a lot of geography has about industry, sectors of the economy, business studies. There's no more single subject in our curriculum that probably links better with every other subject and has probably its greatest strength is that everyman quality, but also its greatest weakness because it is a little bit of science, a little bit of math, a little bit of literacy. Geography is that subject that gives, and it's contemporary because the case studies have to be updated. You don't say the population of the UK is 60 million, 67. geography is always constantly updating because it flows with the changes in society. And I mean, I look at the textbooks that go out of date very, very quickly because, textbooks 10 years ago had China as a developing country. Are you joking? India's now sent man to the moon. So there's no more real subject that keeps it real in my book if it's done properly. That's the point. And it is mostly done properly in schools because most of the geography teachers I know are teaching geography from, again, both physical and human aspects, and their curriculum is constantly updated. So I think the point that she's made is a fair point about how real is school to the real world. And I think there is some aspects of the curriculum that are too abstract and probably need to be updated. I think she is right about the likes of AI. But if she's saying that kids can find everything they want out on AI and Google, and she's going to rely on AI and Google, I think she's symptomatic of the part of the problem we have in our wider society of critical thinking. And I had a child today turn around, actually literally in my history lesson in year 7. I asked him the question, says, well, okay, could you tell me who starts all the wars? And I went, well, Germany, sir. Germany starts all the wars. Many wars have Germany been involved since 1945. Couldn't answer the question. So you form an opinion without any evidence. That's our problem. And this is exactly what Kerry Catone has done. She's just...
And this is what we saw from the writers, didn't we? That actually kind of information wasn't properly understood. It was taken out of context, etc., etc. And then we saw the kind of very physical, tangible moment, didn't we? Where that kind of online space pushed itself into the kind of real world, partly because of that kind of misunderstanding. It is kind of, I need to say that there are kind of other aspects too, but she did say that she thinks that kids should teach kids how to buy a house and do their taxes. And that she calls them the real life skills. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that is missing in the curriculum a lot of the time. And the last school that I worked at, we did every student basically did like a money course, like a finance course. The whole of the year group did it, and that was bank accounts, loan interests, understanding that part of life as well. Because I don't think I have had that at school. Did you? I kind of left school and then I was like, I've got to get a mortgage, I've got to get a credit card, and I'm kind of on my own, really. Yeah.
I mean, schools used to, under the PSHE curriculum, and I was a PSHE coordinator, financial capability was a core part of the pastoral health and social care under a previous administration. So it was to be taught, and it is supposed to be taught through mathematics as well. Yeah. But again, it's not examined. It's this idea of what we should teach the children, unless it has some quantifiable exam at the end of it, it's not as important as it should be. And the same goes for pastoral as well. I think we need to have the conversation about what is valuable for the students to know versus what exam factory schools are producing, because a lot of exam factory schools are only doing what is in their interest to get point scores, not what's in the students' interest. I think that's the more important point that should be made about the balance of subjects that students are taking, the free choice that they're taking, and the death of the arts, the death of music, the death of those creative subjects, which I think, ironically, she should be as a singer saying, because I've heard far too many parents turn around and saying, I don't want my child to do music. There's, why are they doing music? Well, I want them to do maths. We had the conversation again last week where we see maths as the most popular A level. Why is that? Because it's employability. Or people just going, I'm studying this subject because there's an aim to it. I studied geography as a student because I was intrinsically motivated. I was curious about the world. I asked lots of questions, and I'm a social scientist. That's why I'm also a historian, because I like to ask questions. Ironically, if she wants to know where to buy a house, I would advise that she does not build it in Zone 2, Zone 3 floodplain. She builds it close to it, she buys it next to infrastructure, and maybe she'd probably look at the urban models. I wouldn't go with the old concentric circle model. I'd be looking for an area which is an up-and-coming area. I could apply geographical principles to where she should buy a house. So again, she picked examples and then said real, pointless subjects like geography, and everything she said, actually, I could bring geography into, including taxes, which come from employment, which type of employment, service employment, where's the employment, what type of change over time of the employment. Again, I could probably sit down with her and go, maybe, I'm sorry, you didn't have a good education in your school. Maybe you didn't like your geography teacher. I just don't know why she picked upon geography as a pointless subject.
I mean, it seems a shame that obviously that kind of stood the headline, but obviously, we're sponsored by Future and Careers, and they're kind of looking at STEM and shape kind of subjects as and these kind of Gatsby benchmark. And we talked to Tom Bennison last night, didn't we, about kind of STEM schools generally are a bit better at kind of teaching some of these kind of skills, maybe because they've got a bit more flexibility in their timetable. I mean, the school that I was at kind of before the last one, until the last year I was there, it didn't have an art department. It didn't have a music department. It didn't have these things. And I know in one sense that's kind of, there's a criticism there. But what we were able to do in that time, because we didn't have the time, we did do financial capability. We did do those skills on a kind of timetabled lesson. So there was like a buy-in from students that not only was it a timetable lesson, they were learning these kind of real life skills, but there was also a certificate kind of at the end of it, that could be put in a kind of CV or any sort of holder like that.
Yeah.
Do you think though that there's a problem kind of with the back end of this then, as students kind of go through school, that it's then this notion that at universities you study stuff at university that is to kind of get you a better income rather than just study, like you said, for curiosity, for learning's sake?
Well, I studied what I was interested in because there's a direct correlation between what you're interested in and what you're good at.
Yeah.
And I've had that over the years where I'll never forget, but 15 years ago, one of my students who was brilliant at everything, they were very good at everything, and looked at me and said, "Look, sir, I can do maths. I just don't enjoy it. But my parents want me to do maths and science, my older brothers. And you could a physicist, and they want me to follow the same route. But I want to be an artist." And this girl was absolutely phenomenal at art, but she was good at everything. But I could see the parents' point. The parents are like, we want her to get a good job, a good career, and and they were choosing their GCSE options. And she pleaded with me and says, please, can you help me out here? I want to do art at GCSE. I really enjoy it. I love going into the art room. So I literally turned around to the parents and said, look, what's the problem with art? They can't get a job out of it. I was like, okay, but there are jobs come out of art. Like, what about architecture? What's this girl now doing? She's now a brilliant architect. And I would often think of that and go, oh, because they don't see sometimes music. You don't see sometimes the subject, what it gets for you, but you don't study it for that employability. Majority of teachers I know are not teaching the subject that they are qualified in. I'm a geographer and I'm a head of history. How many of us listening here are qualified in something different and going into a classroom and teaching a completely different discipline? How many of us are using our actual degree and have the degree match the teaching subject that we're actually teaching? Or how many of us just sometimes, and adults do this, how many adults do a course at nighttime and something they've always wanted to do? There's a burgeoning kind of growth in adult learning, because a lot of adults out there are saying, well, I did this when I was younger, but you know what, I was really interested in this. I'm going to do it at Open University and that. And that's what you want. You want people to want to learn, and you want people to be motivated to learn. And I think I think a lot of our children are suffering from problems, being forced to do things that they don't want to do because their parents, the school, the point score, and they're not given the option choice. And then you had Rishi Sunak saying, I want to get worthless degrees. Okay, Klingon, maybe I can understand, being fluent in Star Trek. Klingon may not be a worthwhile degree.
Taylor Swift degree.
But yeah, and there are those novelty degrees. I get that. But let's enjoy learning. I think this is the problem we have in this country of taking the joy out of school, taking the joy out of learning, quantifying the unquantifiable. And that's where we're wrong with this. And I don't think subjects of school are pointless, because what would you say is pointless? I could make a case for every subject in my school's curriculum that it offers something to the pot. Language, helps you understand your own language.
We just had a comment, Brent, that's come out that's really interesting, and we kind of commented on before that actually thank you, JBL again, is that actually some of these jobs that supposedly they're going into, we don't even know what they are going to look like at the minute, do we? We don't kind of know what that world is, but that's not the purpose sometimes of education. is to set a standard, isn't it, of learning and inquiry that go forward. I do want to read the other message out that kind of talked about kind of teachers making kind of their own subject just kind of really fascinating, so they can do it. So, for example, we were talking about inflation the other day. And I don't think we kind of, this is another thing that teachers don't do well sometimes, is tie in some subjects. So I was talking about inflation, and the kids were absolutely riveted because I told it through a story about Hitler in the Second World War. Was trying to print kind of, I don't know, £5 million worth of counterfeit £5 notes. This is a plan at one point, and to kind of drop them over the UK to cause inflation. And basically his plan was to basically break the spirit of Britain by getting them to kind of panic buy and that type of thing. So it was an interesting way into inflation that the kids were absolutely fascinated by, this idea of, you know, counterfeiting money, the artists that they got from the camps to kind of do it, you know, all this stuff. And then he kind of got into like a really interesting story about inflation, how it's linked to society, how it's linked to success.
If I think that one of the weaknesses of the secondary school model, I think primary schools do this so much better, is how a primary school teacher is a polymath in that sense. They teach all the subjects, but then they can see the overview of a curriculum. And the amount of times I've looked at the science curriculum and go, hey, you guys are doing that. Oh, we did that 2 weeks ago. And I realize to myself, why are we teaching the same thing? Why couldn't we not? And there is a lot of that. I mean, I have that overview in history, and when I can tie history and geography together. So my year 8, historians are doing about the local industrial revolution. At the same time, the geographers are doing about employment sectors. That's not by accident. You know, I'm trying to match those two curriculums, and I'm able to turn around and say to them, okay, you know about industry, you do it in geography, primary and secondary sector. Okay, we're going to study here about Arkwright's Mill, which is 13 miles up the road, when the growth of the primary to then the secondary sector is. And that needs to happen a lot more. Where we integrate.
I wonder if there's a call then to almost do kind of primary school plus for the first couple of years, where you basically because primary schools do that really well, don't they?
They do. Secondary, it's episodic. You know, you take a child, they go in from one brain, they go into one class. You actually think of it like them. They will go into maths and then they go into another subject, and they're going to switch a different part of the brain off. And interestingly, as someone who in the last couple of years has taught physics, has taught history, has taught geography, is now teaching reading, has taught computers, I get people saying, how can you do all that? And I'm like, well, I can do all that because, you know, the kids have to do all that. And in fact, most of us who are qualified teachers, you know, have got through education. And yeah, there are natural subjects that I am leaning towards. And I'd say that physics, I was at my edge. I could access it. But what I ended up doing in physics was then looking for the geographical stuff, you know, because there's a direct correlation between physics and geography. So, and even the kids spotted that sometimes when I was using some geographical anecdotes, because that's how I could access physics. And then I realized that's the reason why I liked some of the geography, because that type of physics, where you can see the real world application of physics, is where I am as a geographer. But then my physics teacher is an environmental scientist. And you think, well, you've actually as much a geographer as me. And that's the thing. I think people forget that when you get siloed into subjects sometimes, is that they fight their own little corners. And I think our children would do better and would have a better curriculum if, again, our curriculum was a little bit more balanced that way and worked together a little bit more. And again, go back to the examinations, some your interaction of baccalaureates, those type of qualifications, which look at a broad and balanced curriculum taken from different subjects, would be so much better than this individual subjects fighting their own corner. And same with exams, you know, some children will study more for one subject and not. And I think some subjects in some schools are in direct competition for children, competition for exam results.
Yeah, so certainly when it gets
and that's not fair.
You see the pecking order come in, don't you? All of a sudden you get this kind of memo that say, right, maths have got this kind of extra sessions going. You're like, well, hang on a minute. I had like a club at that point that everyone enjoyed, and all of a sudden these students like disappearing, you know, to the kind of maths lessons. But I just wonder if kind of it is kind of that thing where kind of primary school just ends, and it's almost like secondary school is just so different. And it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute, there's a really good model here that everyone enjoyed, and everyone kind of got stuff out. The parents were happy, the kids were happy. You know, they got this rounded curriculum looking at different things. Then all of a sudden, bang, you're into this kind of run of lessons, as you said, We're expecting children to switch off and switch on different parts of the brains every hour. And then in some cases, they're having like a mad lunchtime at like 11:15 because they can't kind of deal with the amount of pupils in. But we did used to have a... Go on.
Yes, we did. We had that at some stage. Yeah. And in fact, we tried that where we had free learning. But again, it goes back to what's the exam? We've just become too narrow, too results focused. I think we've lost the essence of what it is we're trying to do. And I think JBL's comment was actually right. What skills are we teaching the children? What for our future, we don't even know. I think somebody said to me like 15 years ago, teaching children for the technology not invented, for a world we don't know exists, to solve problems we don't know. But we actually do know some of those problems. And that's the thing is school fit for purpose? When I was a kid at school, the best computer I have come across in my life was in school. School was kind of a place that was ahead. Problem is now schools aren't. The best technology is not in school. And I think that's where you're getting a lot of children now saying, a lot of parents saying, what's the point in school? Because I could learn more. And that's the key. What she's saying there is, what do they need school for now when they've got Google? Going back to that young lad today, he turned around and I says, where do you get your information from? And literally he turned around to one of his mates and he says, well, I get it from Google. And I'm like, there you are. And he goes, well, where else? And here's the next comment. Where else am I meant to get it from? Of which then a book, library. And the book that I got back was what I mean, the link to 2 stories was like, really? And I'm almost like, yeah. And that's the problem. I'm thinking, oh my God, they are just going to be cannon fodder for every misinformation. We're in trouble. Because our kids just, they're so overloaded with information. Yeah. And yet they have no understanding. And yet at school, what are we doing? We have a curriculum which overloads them with information. It's just...
I'm going to cut you off there, Brent, because we want to kind of really get to... You got some bits that you want to do about the weekend. I know that you're really kind of excited about the weekend, but I do want everyone to get over to listen to Chris's show, the TTR Bake Off Special, a technical challenge of one-off lessons for multiple groups. So please join Chris on Podbean for that. That'll be on kind of Spotify and platforms later on. Just want to say, do you want to kind of quickly mention this weekend, Brent? What are you up to this weekend?
This weekend, me and my T-shirt will be taking myself up to Manchester, centre of Manchester, and I'll be there with some history luminaries. I'm going to be meeting some of my history textbook heroes, and like Ben Walsh, Aaron Wilkes. These guys have been, they're big hitters of history, and we've got. I going to feel like a imposter syndrome there. But we're going to have some really, really good presentations of diversity in history, discussing different things. I'll be discussing Middle Eastern history at Key Stage 4 for a couple of minutes. But we have at least 20 speakers, and I expect a good turnout at that. But it's a free event with Eventbrite. Obviously, Teachmeet is a really good
event. We've got like literally 1 minute, so we just got to say a quick thank you to our sponsors for tonight, Future Careers, providing, as we've said before, those kind of resources for STEM and SHAPE. From articles, activity sheets, animations, podcasts, they all align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free to download from futurumcareers.com, and you can subscribe today. John Catt, you can use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off. Loads of professional development books on johncattbookshop.com. Reading Solutions UK is the home of the Dreambox Reading Plus, and you can go onto their kind of online program to create stronger readers from Key Stage 2 to GCSE, and they've got kind of evidence-based adaptive teaching technology within that, and you can get a free 4-week pilot today by searching Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request a free trial. We've got 5 seconds left, so we'd just like to say thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Look after yourself as always. Good night.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.